Hello everyone and welcome again. This video is about placing a geostationary satellite into orbit, and this is something new for most of you. And notice that I'm saying placing a geostationary satellite in orbit, not launching geostationary satellites into orbit, because launching it to orbit you just need a certain altitude and bang, you're in geostationary orbit. But placing it on above specific longitude or specific station or country, this is the point. And in order to do that, we need, first of all, we need to know the altitude of the geostationary orbit, and then we'll need another orbit which I call the intermediate orbit. That intermediate orbit should have a certain period that we're going to find out, and has the same the apogee of that orbit has the same altitude as the geostationary orbit, but we still don't know the perigee. We need specific time for its orbit. We know its apogee, we don't know its perigee. So the perigee will be this initial orbit. So I need to reach that initial orbit in order to have a specific time for that intermediate orbit. And bear with me, I'm going to explain why. So how to define the initial orbit altitude? We know the time. Here's the time. This is the time of the period of the orbit, and from that time we get the semi-major axis. We subtract 2 radius of the Earth, and then the remaining will be the initial orbit altitude. And why we do all of this? So once we are in the initial orbit, we'll wait until we are above the location or the longitude that we want the geostationary satellite to be above all the time. And at that point, we'll do our burn to extend the apogee as desired here. And after half period of this satellite, it will be here. This is half, but the Earth would have rotated 0.3 sidereal day. After another half, we'll have one complete orbit and 0.6 for the Earth. Then 1.5 and 0.9 for the Earth. Then 2 orbits and 1.2 for the Earth. And then finally 2.5 orbits for the satellites, and then 1.5 for the Earth. At that time, if you do your burn, you'll start circulating an orbit that has the altitude of the geostationary satellite. And this is what we see in the video right now. So the station that you've been seeing, I put in the northern hemisphere of this planet on latitude minus 100.7. And as you see here, I'm going to do fast forward, and you can see the planet is spinning, the satellite is rotating around it the same speed. So yeah, this is geostationary. It could be not very accurate, but yeah, this is the idea. And then I'll move into the station. This is the station here, and it has a tracking mechanism. It can get the azimuth and the altitude. So the azimuth should be south, exactly south, if the craft is at the zenith of that longitude line. Let's see here, it started tracking, and here's the azimuth. It will settle to 180. Now this method of launch technically is correct, but it may not be viable. This may not be the same technique that's being used for reasons that I'll mention later. Now, one thing is left to say is the 0.6. Where did I get that 0.6 of the intermediate orbit? So the 0.6 orbital period, how did I get it? I get it with the help of this excuse me, spreadsheet. First thing, I know that the geostationary satellite should have an orbit period of 50,416 seconds. And this is the minimum orbital period. This is just straight after launch at the lowest altitude possible. And the percentage was 0.43. So whatever percentage I'm looking for, that's supposedly the 0.6, should be more than 0.43. And then I put a table here. This is the satellite position on apogee or perigee. And here the longitude that the Earth is facing, or the longitude of the station, is facing apogee of the perigee of that intermediate satellite, intermediate orbit. So here I put the ratio. I put, let's say, 0.5, and we get some green colors here. This means that the longitude is at this time is facing the apogee of the intermediate craft, or of the intermediate orbit. But the craft itself is at perigee, so they don't match. So say 0.55, nothing, and then 0.6. Of course, this is what I tried. So I got one window here, and this of course doesn't work. The next one, after 3 days, it doesn't work because it's not facing the same direction as the craft. But then the 6th day, or in 4.5 days, we still can get it. So that's how I found the 0.6. It's just I kept trying numbers until I found this. Now, this is not the way that geostationary satellites are being launched into orbit, because it needs a bigger burn at the apogee, which means a bigger rocket or a bigger craft, and then that craft will be separated and then stays out there in the space as a space junk. So the way they do it is they use a very small engine, a very lightweight engine, and highly efficient supposedly. And every time it's at the apogee, it makes a small burn. That's how it reaches the orbit, maybe in weeks or even months. And thank you all for watching.